just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall again. Hello, welcome to episode number 11 of my life story, Lonnie Jones' life story and what God's done for me through the years. Sometimes you might not, God might not even be mentioned in one of the episodes, but believe me, He's there, and you'll be hearing a lot about what He's done for me later on. You already heard some of what He's done for me recently, back in episode 1, 2, and 3, but you'll be hearing as we go along things that He done for me, and you wouldn't really realize that He's doing these things for you until you stop and think about it. You got to have Him on your mind. But anyway, we're in episode 11. I hope you've enjoyed episode 10. Episode 11, we're going to start back at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That's where we left Washington, D.C. and went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for 2 weeks at a big Army base. Probably the biggest Army base in the United States. I'm not sure of that, but pretty close to sure. Fort Bragg, North Carolina, because me being on the carnival, that's where the money is at, the first of every month. And sometimes the 15th of the month, we would always hit the Army and Air Force, Navy bases, and because they'd get paid. And of course, the carnival's there to take the money. And believe me, they will take it. They can't lose. Everything's rigged. It's like a lot of other things these days. It is rigged. So anyway, I've told you a little bit about the carnival being rigged and what I've done for them. And we're down now in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I believe we got up 16 joints. And back when I first left in March, Dixon, Tennessee, in March on this carnival roundabout thing that I was on, I was promised a lot of things. And so far, we already gone upstate New York, back down to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. None of these things have come true that I was promised. So you're looking at first-hand information on what a carnival, how it operates. It cheats you, and it'll cheat people. It works for the carnival as well. So anyway, we got 16 joints set up. The weather's beautiful, and we got this big, huge tractor and trailer that we haul all this stuff in. So he gives me one of the joints. They call them joints. Gave me one of the joints that I could make a lot of money at if he would have paid me. But I have no hope of getting paid because he hadn't paid me so far. So why would he pay me now? Well, he just needed somebody to run the joint, basically what it was. And I was the guinea pig because I was there, didn't have the money to get home to leave all that stuff. So, and that was our last stop for the season anyway. It was Fort Bragg, North Carolina was our last stop. So he gave me a joint, and the joint that I had where you throw a ball up in this net, and all around the outside is about a 1x12 board, and it's got circles painted all different colors all the way around. Some of them pay 10 to 1, some of them pay 2 to 1, some pay 5 to 1, and so forth and so on. So what we'd do is throw the volleyball up in this net. This net would come out the bottom of the net, and it would roll around until it stopped in a hole that had a color. All places where the ball could stop, it would stop on a color. And if you were lucky enough to be standing on the outside and gambling against the thing, and it hit on your blue, red, yellow, whatever you might have your money on, however much money you had on there, it paid you as much as it said. If it was 12 to 1 and you had $1 on there, and you got $12 for your $1. Or if it was 5 to 1, you get $5. Or if you had 50 cents, it'd be 5 50-cent pieces. So that's how the game went that I was running. So I was throwing the ball up in there, and had a couple of guys working in there with me, going around collecting money and paying it off and so forth and so on, as they would win or lose. If they lost, he'd collect the money. If they win, well, we'd give them out however much the odds were that they won. They had another one very similar to that in the midway, and it had a mouse in a box. And the mouse it was high enough the walls the mouse couldn't get out when you put him in there. So, and they could always catch him in a box. They had a place where how they could always put him back in that shoe box when they'd get ready to turn him loose. So instead of throwing a ball over in the net, this one here had a mouse in it, and whatever. When they got that mouse out of that box and dumped him out on this board, it was going around and around, and it had holes. It had holes, and these holes were colored: white, black, green, purple, and so forth and so on. Whatever hole that mouse went in, it was just like the ball that I was throwing on up the midway a little farther. Whatever hole that mouse went in, if you was on that color, you would win. Just like same thing as if I was throwing the ball, the mouse was doing what my ball was doing. So that was a pretty intriguing joint, and they would never play. That joint would never be played unless there was several people playing, because that was the odds. They had to have the odds in their favor before they would play the game. Like it was like a 12-foot square tent, and it would they'd have to have so many people playing it, or we would have to have so many people playing it before we would throw the ball or turn the mouse loose, because we have to. Carnival always had the odds in its favor. It was never no other way. Couldn't be any way but odds in their favor. Everything they did was in their favor. They didn't go upstate New York from Dixon, Tennessee to lose nothing. They went to bring money back. And that's what they were doing. So, make a long story short, that was the job that I had for the 2 weeks at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, was running the joint that had the volleyball. You throw it over the net and it landed in a certain color hole, and if you had it, you win. If you didn't, and so forth. Now, I found out since episode 10 what the lady's name was married to Bernie Feldman, and her name was Geneva, and she was a fielder, and she wasn't Jewish, and you already been told that he married her instead of a Jewish lady, and therefore he got kicked out of the Klan up in New York, and that really didn't make any difference. He still had a wad of money that would choke an elephant, or burn a wet mule and him running, however you want to put it. But her name was Geneva, and again, she was a fielder. And I found that out through Sue Wright. I went to school with a lady called Sue. Her name is Sue Wright. I went to school with her and her brother, Clinton Hugh Harris. And they were Harrises, and maiden names were Harrises. And anyway, Sue found out for me about Geneva's name, found out who she was, and she was a fielder. I knew where she lived, come from, and everything, but I couldn't remember her first or last name. But she became Geneva Feldman because she married the Jewish fellow from New York. So that's, we was trying to find that out back in more episodes, so I did find that out since number 10 episode, who she was. And she had her own joint. Now, her joint she had one person working in the joint with her, and her joint was about a 16-inch to an 18-inch square green board, and it had a wooden arrow right in the center of it. It looked just like Wheel of Fortune, except it was laying down flat. When you spun it, you spin it down this way. You wouldn't spin it around like they do on the Wheel of Fortune. Very similar to what Wheel of Fortune was. But hers was square, and it had nails, very much like the Wheel of Fortune when you spin that thing. And it had prizes, and none of the prizes was worth nothing hardly at all. But what they did have, they would have silver dollars or $5 bills in between certain nails. And right in between certain nails is the odds in their favor. Remember I told you the odds was in their favor? Well, this thing is rigged. This thing is rigged. It's a spring-loaded spindle in there. And what it was is when she had her money in a little cigar box, and it was very much, if you remember back on one of the episodes when you're throwing at those 6 cats I talked about, the fuzzy cats, and the guy would lean up against the 2x4, and the board would come up in the back. Well, this is very similar to that. This is in a very small scale. That board was about 1 inch thick, and it had an arrow in the center of it with nails so far apart all the way around it. And when you spun that thing, whatever that arrow landed on, that's what you'd win. Well, on the side where she had her little cigar box and her money in it, there was a little button. You couldn't see the button. You wouldn't have no idea what you was looking for. If you didn't know what you was looking for, you couldn't see it or find it. But it had a little button. And what she would do is if you wanted you to take a practice spin, everybody gets a practice spin. And of course, she'd lean against that cigar box, and that lucky spin, it would land on a $5 bill, or it would land on a $10 bill, $20 bill, or silver dollar. But when she didn't touch it, she left that box alone, and they spun that thing, it would never, ever, ever land on anything that was worth anything. It would never land in between two nails with anything that was worth over a dime or a nickel even. Because they were buying these things, they buying these little bitty trinkets, things, pennies on a dollar. And people were trying to hit those silver dollars and hitting the big money, not realizing, not having a clue that they weren't going to win nothing except whatever it landed on between the nails, and it was not going to land on any money. It wasn't going to land on anything. And the trick to this thing, of course, is it's called prize every time. You would get a prize every time, all right. It cost you a quarter, and you'd get a 3-cent prize, because it would not land between the nails with the money. Anything was worth anything, it would not land on. All she had to do is lean against that cigar box, and when you land on the cigar box, it would always land on the big money, big prize, because it was loaded, it was rigged to do that. And I keep telling my wife that the Wheel of Fortune wheel is rigged too. If you don't think it's not rigged, watch it spinning and watch them stop it where they want to stop it. I'm sitting here, have no proof of that whatsoever. Proof I've got of the carnival being able to stop that arrow anywhere they want it. And I'll promise you, if you'll start watching Wheel of Fortune, you start watching that thing, watch them go bankrupt. The odds of them hitting bankrupt when they don't need to hit bankrupt, the odds are 10,000 to 1. But they do it. They get them to a certain point, they'll bankrupt them. So anybody that's watching this, like watch the Wheel of Fortune, you watch that Wheel of Fortune watch that thing slow down. It don't just go and get slower and slower and slower. It just, all of a sudden, it'll just get slower, and they'll stop it right where they want to stop it. But I'm doing the talking here. I don't know what they're doing or not doing, but I know what the carnival did, and I will promise you that thing is rigged too. But that's neither here nor there. That's another story for some other time and somebody else. I'm comparing Wheel of Fortune against the carnival games. All carnival games are rigged, barring none. There's not one that's not rigged. So, let's get back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So the week's going on through, and we just taking money in hand over fist, right, left. Money's coming in all directions. Well, the second week, we done gone into the second week, and everything's running smooth, making all kinds of money. About got everybody in town all their money, and the soldiers too on top of that. So Saturday night comes at 12 o'clock of the second week, and we're going to pack up, tear everything down, pack up, and go home. Come to Nashville. We're going to put all this stuff on. Everybody going to pitch in and tear all these joints down and put them in these gunny sacks and put them on this big tractor and trailer, and we're going to bring them to Nashville, Tennessee, and store them. So the year before, if you remember, they stored them in Raleigh, North Carolina. This year, they stored them down here in Nashville, Tennessee. That the next year they did. So time come to close up. Well, we're taking everything off the shelves. I got a guy back there, and I'm handing him. Remember now, you've got all this velvet hanging down, covering up the shelves and everything. You can't see anything behind the velvet and everything. And so I'm handing him all the stuff off the shelves, and he's supposed to be putting them in the trunks. We had trunks. Every joint had a trunk that you put all your prizes in, whether it be teddy bears, horse clocks, whatever prizes there were. We had this big, huge trunk, and we'd put them in. Sometimes we'd have 2 trunks, and all of them were marked. Whatever joint it was for, that's what they was marked for. So I'm handing this guy all these horse clocks and all these teddy bears and stuff. He's putting them in a trunk behind the curtain. So, make a long story short, he and I are doing that. Meanwhile, all the people that was working for him those 2 weeks, making all this money, they done stole what they can steal from him, and they're gone. And guess what? That leaves me and 2 other guys. The guy that's helping me take my stock down, put it in the trunk in the back while I'm handing it to him. There's going to be a store right there, so just hang tight. There's going to be a one whale of a store right there. Me handing that man that stuff, and he's supposed to be putting it in a trunk. So we're left with him, me, and the tractor and trailer driver tear down 16 joints. Tear down 16 joints. Get all the stock out of them because everybody was working in them, done stole what they could steal, and they were gone. They wasn't going to do nothing else. They was done. The year was over for them. So here I am, me and 2 other guys, got loaded and all that stuff, tear all that stuff down, put it all in this big truck. We started at midnight doing that, and the break of day the next morning, we was dragging the last gunny sack across the grounds to the truck, putting it in the truck. So we got out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina the next morning in the vicinity of 8 o'clock. In the vicinity of 8 o'clock. Me and the other 2 guys had to tear everything down. Everybody done left. It was all on us. Now, remember, I was supposed to make all this money back when I started to work for them. I was going to make all this money for all these people who were going to need joint for me putting them up and tearing them down. I got so much money. I was supposed to get so much money for all that. Well, till this day, today, right now, 2020, I've yet to get into that money. I never got it then. I've never gotten it since. Make a long story short, we get that big truck loaded, and we head towards Nashville. And I want to back up and clarify something. We did not bring that tractor and trailer to Nashville. We stopped off again in North Carolina, and we did leave it at the same warehouse. We brought the house trailer on in that they lived in. We brought it on in to Dixon, Tennessee. But before all that happened, we went into, I think it was Raleigh, North Carolina, where we left all the tents and the joints, as we call them, where we left everything. Well, lo and behold, all this money I was supposed to be getting and all this stuff, and I supposed to got paid the next day when we got everything tore down. Supposed to, get paid every day, but I ain't gotten paid for nothing. I was eating their grub off of little tickets. You already know that, and no money. If he wanted to give me $5 or $10, he did. That's basically what I was. I was his monkey, or what do you want, gopher? What do you want to call him? I was doing all this stuff, and I was basically doing it for room and board, and my room was a army cot in the back of my tent. That was my board, and my food was off of a stamp, and it wasn't fit to eat. But make a long story short, I stayed with it the whole summer because don't forget, I come off an old farm down there. I didn't know, I knew right from wrong, but I didn't know all this lying and cheating and thieving and all that stuff even existed until I got on this carnival. And boy, then I learned a lesson. I told you I was going to learn a lesson. I learned one. Let me tell you this one. When we got to North Carolina with all this stuff on there, he got to checking the inventory. Got to checking the inventory, these trunks and everything, to see what all they had. Well, they opened up my trunk, and there wasn't nothing in my trunk. And here's how that worked. I was handing it to a guy underneath the pretty red velvet. He was handing it to another guy, and they were stealing it. Instead of putting it in the trunk, in my trunk, they was passing on and stealing it. Well, when he checked my trunk, that made, in his mind, that made me clear with him. He don't owe me nothing. Now, isn't that just cute? Isn't that the smartest thing? Isn't that typical? And nowhere near what was in that trunk could have ever paid me what he promised me. No, if he'd given me what he promised me, I'd have made $50,000 that year. In 1960, I could have made $50,000 if he would pay me 50% of what he promised me. I could have made $50,000. You can imagine what all I did that I was supposed to get paid for, and I didn't. And when he opened up my trunk, and I'm not too sure till this day that he wasn't in on that himself, the owner, to keep from paying me anything when he brought me home. Till this day, I'm not too sure he wasn't in on it. If he was a crook to you, he'd be a crook to me too. If he's a liar to me, he'll be a liar to me. So I think Bernie Feldman was a thief, lying, scandal, no good for nothing, because he never did anything he promised that he would do for me. So, but now his wife, she got to keep every dime that come in her joint. She got to keep everything that came in to her place. So it wasn't any problem on that. And because anything she made with her prize every time, she got to keep that. So anyway, when we checked the trunks and everything in Raleigh, North Carolina, I'm pretty sure it was Raleigh, I had nothing in mind. So we left the big truck there, and the truck driver, he departed and went on about his way. The other guy went on about his way. And I'm bringing Bernie and Geneva to Dixon. I'm still pulling in her house trailer. I'm still doing what I said I would do. I'm still not getting anything for nothing. But I just stuck by them because I didn't know any better. But I learned plenty. I learned a lot. 1960, I learned a ton. So we got back to Nashville. I parked their trailer out on Dickerson Road. There's a big trailer park on Dickerson Road. When you top the hill off of North First Street, there's a school on your left up there. Just after you pass that school, I'm not too sure what the name of it is. And before you get to Trinity Lane, there's a huge trailer park back in there. Well, I parked their trailer in there. We got in the car. He carried me over to my sister's, which is Myrtle, which she lives right now in Addison City. She's 93 years old. Carried me over to her house, and he handed me a $50 bill. And that's all I was left there with was a $50 bill at my sister's house. And my sister lived in Nashville. Of course, Dad's already gone. So, making a long story short, I have done everything I said I'd do. He's done nothing he said he would do. And his wife was a sweet lady. She was from the country, but she drank like a fish. She drank. Back then, I didn't even drink. I never started drinking until I was 25 years old. So, make a long story short, I didn't even drink back in those days, but she drank, and she stayed stoned half the time just to put up with him, I guess. I don't know. Or she made a ton of money. There's no telling how much money that she had when she passed away. And the last account that I had of her, I don't have a clue what happened to Bernie. But Geneva, they lived in a real beautiful home out in East Dixon, out toward 70 on 70 Highway. I believe I'm right, out towards the east side of Dixon, in a beautiful home. And I understand that she was found dead in the living room, and I think she was didn't have any clothes on. She was probably maybe going take a shower or whatever. But anyway, whatever, I don't have a clue. But she passed away, and they found her in the floor, dead later on. So what we're going to do, we're going to wind this up right here, and we'll start back, and I'll start telling you a little bit more about me living with my sister and what I did after I got with my sister and everything. But right now, what we're going to do, we're going to cut off, and we're going to do you a couple of songs, and I hope you'll enjoy them. Hope you'll enjoy I believe it's number 11. Yeah, number 11, episode number 11. And don't forget to come see us at our church. I got a little note here I need to tell everybody about Friendship Missionary Baptist Church at 101 Flat Ridge Road in Goodlettsville, Tennessee. Come out there on Sunday and listen to our preacher. We got a on fire preacher. Let me tell you, we do. We'd love for you to come out. And again, that is Friendship Missionary Baptist Church at 101 Flat Ridge Road in Goodlettsville. When you go through Goodlettsville, when you top the ridge, it's right on your right. So we'd love for you to do that. And don't forget, follow us and hit like, if you will, on Facebook. And of course, subscribe on YouTube. If you'll do that, we certainly would appreciate it. So I'm going to get everybody up here right now. We're going to do you a couple of real pretty numbers for episode number 11. So just hang on just a minute. All right. Well, episode 11, we're going to do you a couple of pretty songs right now. We hope you enjoy them. The one I'm going to do for you is Bury Me Beneath the Willow. I got Ronnie helping me out tonight. Look at these guys. Look at what I got on stage with me. They come in a while ago for me. Ray Mangrum and Roger Ball, boy, and got my son with me. He ain't been with me for about 3 or 4 months.
Oh, it
and look at him there. We got him tonight, though, by golly. And he's talking about Mike coming back more often from now on. Let's do Bury Me Beneath the Willow. Until the angels all play whisper, he will prove untrue to you. For every plea beneath the willow, under the weeping willow tree, so he will know where I am sleeping, and perhaps you'll weep for me. How about that? Boy, out there, good sound. What a band. Let me tell you. Boy, where can you go get bands for nothing like this? Boy, I tell you, you got some good friends, but they'll come and work for nothing. Well, that's enough of that joke. That was a bad joke. Rita, what you going to do for us? We're on episode number 11. You better do good, because we got to do better every time we do this thing.
That's good. That's good.
I got to talk about Ronnie here for long.
Well, I'm going to do a song called Don't You Want to Go There in the key of B.
In the key of B.
Go there, do you want to see? Do you want to see? But he ain't no man. He's rolling, rolling his children. Time is coming, just wanna go. Kind of living that simple way. Heartaches and troubles, day after day. Open up your heart now, let it cleanse your soul. You better get ready. Wanna go there. Don't you wanna see? Don't you wanna see? Oh man, but you hear it calling, calling his children. Your time is coming. Don't you wanna go? Learn the story, you know it's true. Come on the cross there, we're all God's children. He loves us all. Better get ready if you wanna go. Do you wanna go there? Do you wanna see him? Do you wanna see? But he ain't no man. Don't hear him calling, calling his children. Your time is coming.
Time, Ray.
Wanna go. Go there, don't you wanna see? Don't you wanna see? But he ain't no man. Hear him calling, calling his children. Your time is coming. Don't you wanna go? Your time is coming. Don't you wanna go?
All right, hope you enjoyed it. Episode number 11. Boy, we got to had the music on it, but that might not have been right. Boy, the music was just right. So we'll see you on episode 12. I think I'm going to get those guys to come back next week and do 12 with me. I think, can I get y'all to do that next, number 12?
Sure enough.
Okay, they said they would. So we'll see you on episode 12. Thank you.
Jesus died on the cross from a dogwood tree. He gave his life and soul just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall again, for the blood shed that day was on the wood from a dogwood tree.